Welcome to a really unique little geyser here in the middle of nowhere, Utah. I'm south of the town of Green River. I'm east of the San Rafael Swell, and I'm north of Moab. But really, it's pretty desolate out here. This is Crystal Geyser, and is not like any other geyser you've probably ever visited. Have I got your attention? Stick around. We'll talk about the geology of it. So if you're a fan of geysers like Old Faithful, or you've heard of hot springs like Mammoth Hot Springs, or Thermopolis, or Saratoga, or some of these places, the one thing they all have in common is geothermal heat that creates steam that pressurizes the groundwater and shoves it up through the Earth's crust to create a geyser. This doesn't do that. This actually doesn't have any geothermal activity under it at all. How does that work?
I don't know.
It all comes down to geology, and John Wesley Powell discovered that on July 13th of 1869 when he noticed some, quote, interesting rocks and made a note of them in his journal on the side of the river here. What caught his eye was this travertine, which is an iron-rich carbonate mineral that turns orange as it oxidizes, but it's originally white when it comes out from the ground. Powell didn't make any mention of eruption or geothermal activity, but the fact that there's travertine all over the surface suggests that this thing was erupting at some point in the recent past prior to his arrival on the banks. The lack of geothermal activity makes this one a head scratcher though. It's true that most geysers are geothermal features, and the water gets heated up because it percolates down either through faults or in a porous rock layer to what's called the geothermal gradient, which is where things start to get really heated up as you get closer to the Earth's mantle. The hot water then gets pressurized as it boils and starts to shoot back up along other faults or host rocks to the surface. And that's how you generate these hot springs and eventually eruptions if you build up enough pressure. And as the hot water percolates through the rock layers, it dissolves minerals like carbonate and then carries them to the surface, where as soon as it starts to cool, they precipitate out. That's what creates those really cool formations and benches and fountains and interesting shapes we all like with thermal hot springs. But it's also a host for things like cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, which create these really crazy green and blue and orange mats that are often associated with thermal vents. And you can see these all over Yellowstone Park and other famous places with hot springs. But Crystal Geyser is a CO2-driven geyser, carbon dioxide, which is very rare. And the carbon dioxide is being sourced by carbonate rocks in the Jurassic strata that are being dissolved from water infiltrating from the Green River itself. So as the water moves through the rocks, it dissolves the carbonates, makes CO2, and provides the carbonation. It's basically a giant soda can. And when it pops, it can be pretty impressive. Historically, it got up to about 130 feet tall, which is around 40 meters. But for whatever reason now, it only gets to be about 10 feet tall, which is around 3 meters. So not super spectacular, but still pretty impressive. It's also worth mentioning that the low water table is only around 17 feet or 5 meters below the surface. So it's not a super deep reservoir. But that's okay, because check out this really cool geology we have to spend some time looking at. The travertine here has some really interesting little squiggly and undulatory paths that look like they might be burrows or roots, but they're not. They're just interesting little flow patterns. Some of them do seem to be around plant stems, but others are not. There's a lot of little micro terraces that look just like the stuff you see in Mammoth Hot Springs at Yellowstone or Thermopolis, but at a much smaller scale. And these were just little temporary pools of water where there was pretty much like a little baffle or dike built around them as the carbonate precipitated out. It's making a little bit of a gurgling noise, like it wants to do something, but nothing's happening. No aqua cola coming to the surface. Now, you might have noticed it's got a pretty obvious pipe. It's not 100% natural. That's because its current iteration is the result of a failed oil well that was drilled in 1935 here through these Jurassic deposits, probably trying to reach the Navajo sandstone or something down below. Instead, it wound up just getting a whole lot of water, bubbly water, and it reignited, so to speak, this geyser that had been active sometime prior to the 1880s. Uh-oh. Sounds like something's happening. Looks like steam or something coming out. Something's happening. Maybe? Now, Crystal Geyser erupts on average every 8 hours or every 22 hours. There's a bimodality that nobody really understands. The odds of being here when it erupts are pretty low. So I've got two choices. I can either sit here for 8 to 22 hours and wait for it to erupt, or I can just say, well, maybe better luck next time. And I think, the sun's going down. I'm kind of hungry. It's getting late. I need a shower. It's been a long day in the field. I might just do that. So I hope you enjoyed this little trip to visit the not very exciting at the moment Crystal Geyser. Get out and explore. There's all kinds of cool geological things to be found. Rocks, fossils, sites. They're out there. Just got to find them. So until next time, as always, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the outcrop. Take it easy.